Have you faced some big challenges in your life? You are not alone. Being inspired by others who have faced similar challenges is what helps shine light on your path. And here are those stories. Hi, I'm Greg Crawford, and welcome to the Challenge to Triumph Show. All right, here we are, the Challenge to Triumph Show. I'm really excited about this guest, Bryce Prescott. I actually met him through a mutual friend just recently. She told me a little bit about his story, and then me and Bryce jumped on the phone. We immediately connected. I feel like we have a lot in common, and Bryce has a lot to his story. Part of it is health and life, and part of it is business related. And I feel like there's a lot to learn from Bryce. The amount I learned from just one phone call with him, really, it changed me that week. I started really thinking differently from our conversation, Bryce, and I'm very excited and grateful that you're on the show, that we could tell your story to everyone that's listening to this podcast. So, Bryce, welcome, man.
Well, Dave, I called you Dave. That's horrible. You're not Dave. I was thinking Greg.
I look like
Pardon me, Greg. First of all, honestly, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's always an honor for me when I'm invited to go on other shows. The idea that somebody would listen to my story and possibly be inspired by it is very motivating for me. And my work that I do in coaching, I'm a podcaster myself. I understand how impactful, really engaged, thoughtful conversations can be, both for the participants, me and you. We're in this together, even though there's people listening to this, and it's going to be on your show, and the tone and message of your show is super powerful. I'm looking forward to connecting with you further, man. Like, we had a great chat the other day, and that connection, I think, is going to help a lot of people as they hear this. And I think for me, one of the most important things for everybody that's listening to this show is, regardless of your station in life, regardless of your circumstance, you're not alone. And there are ways for you to overcome the challenges that you are experiencing. And there's no reason for you to feel isolated. And there are people out there like myself and like Greg that are here to be shoulders to lean on and ears to hear you. And hopefully you can gain some sort of insight and perspective from our conversation today.
That's crazy that you said you're not alone, because that's the actual headline on the blog's website, Challenge to Triumph website. It starts off by saying you're not alone. So,
well, serendipity is real, man.
Yeah, man. All right. So let's kick it off by my first question. I just want to ask you, and I like to ask people this because I'm a big book reader. I love reading books. Name one book. I know there's a lot of books, but name one book that had a major impact on your life.
Just one, huh?
I know. It's a tough question.
Well, considering that this is a podcast about triumph, and that I'll share the book that was the catalyst for some amazing changes, both in my mindset.
And I'm taking notes.
It helped. So. What was that?
I'm taking notes on what book you're going to tell us. So.
Okay, perfect. It's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And basically, in my history, it's one of the very first books that I ever read that eased me into the idea that your thoughts have a power behind them, that your thoughts are things. For whatever reason, it's interesting in our culture. The law of attraction is a very polarizing concept to some people. Some people are really on board with the idea that, with your mind and the power of intention, that you can create specific results. Other people think that's a bunch of malarkey. I was on the malarkey side for the longest part of my life, but yet I ironically had evidence to the contrary, that, when I would focus on certain things in my thoughts and in my intentions, that I was end up being able to create those results in my life. And so this book, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, was my first foray into that. It's I jokingly call it a great toilet read. Like, it's really easy to read. You can sit while you're doing your business and do it. And the format of the book isn't so much linear in that you're required to follow a storyline for all the chapters. It's very resourceful. That part of the main concepts of the book is showing the difference in mindset between people that understand wealth and growth and a growth-based mindset and those that don't. And for when I first read it, it helped me to diagnose, if you will, where I was at. where I was at in the certain areas of my mindset and helped me to from there. Like I said, I used the word catalyst deliberately. That launched me into a track that helped me go down a self-development route that completely changed
So
my mindset, my skill sets, my habits, everything. I mean, it was great. I recommend that book to anybody.
okay. So it sent you down the rabbit hole of personal
Yes.
development. So I forgot to mention this actually. For those of you that don't know, Bryce is a mindset and high performance coach. And like I said from the intro, like one conversation with this guy gets your like mind rocked. So I'll be putting all his contact information and where you can find out about him all in the show notes and stuff like that. So Bryce, let's dive in, brother. The
Let's do it.
messier,
I'm in.
and there's the core value of this show is the messier the better.
Okay, let's get messy then. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, so let's go back. I know your story. Let's go back to when you first started your first company, and you were, it was back in the mortgage booming days, and you were like Mr. Type A. It seemed like Type A. You were like doing business and kicking butt, and take it from there.
Yeah, so I jokingly refer to myself as a faux type A. I wanted to be a type A, but I wasn't any good at it. But in the same breath, though, I do have a very distinct attention to detail, and I understand, I guess, unlike some type A personalities, how nuance works when it comes to specific relationships and helping people. My first major career, I would say, after I had a little stint as a wannabe skier when I was in my 20s. And my first real career after college was in the mortgage business. And it was the first time that I refer to it as kind of like the half in, half out career. Mortgage business has changed since then, but it still has a little bit of this where you're in a corporate environment somewhat. You're required to keep, rules and guidelines, and there's things you have to live by in that space, but yet you have a lot of autonomy over how much money you make, the business you build, how many clients you can get. You can really control that based on how big you want to grow your own little sect of that company. And it was a powerful thing for me to be in that, because it allowed me to really understand how to sell, how to communicate, how to understand how to take care of people, how to really notice that like details within a relationship over time add up that can equate to loyalty or can equate to disloyalty, on both sides. It was the best thing for me in my 20s to be doing that. I was in the mortgage business until 2008. Basically, I had created nice little team of loan officers I was working with. It was during the big boom. In the 2000s, there was a lot of real estate development all throughout the country. That loans were very easy to obtain, and we took full advantage of that. When I shifted out of it, though, it was really kind of I bring up that book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. That book played a pivotal role because I was not wanting to admit the signs that I was seeing in 2007 and early 2008 with the pending mortgage shift that happened. The credit crisis happened, the bottom fell out of housing, credit markets dried up. I didn't want to admit that this was coming, even though that my better sensibilities let me know that this can't continue at the same rate, just as impossible. And I had a friend of mine reach out to me in very early of 2008. And he says to me, he's like, dude, it's coming. Mortgage market's going to crash. It's already crashing in some ways. I have a way where we can buy foreclosed homes for pennies on the dollar, and we can buy them up in bunches at a time. I have another connection where we can then take these homes and we can write mortgage paper using seller financing, where we can actually help people get into homes that have been displaced. And we're the bank. We're the ones taking the money at that point. And I was knee deep in mortgages at that time as a traditional mortgage broker. And I thought, I can't even get a bank to discount yield spread 1%. How are we going to buy houses for pennies on the dollar? It didn't compute for me. And so I told him as much and said, wished him well on his way. And a couple months later, I'm introduced to that book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. And part of that book is that the author had a seminar company called Peak Potentials, which taught in depth the principles that are in that book. And I went to my first, it was called the Millionaire Mind Intensive. I went to this event, started really changing my mindset regarding money, changing my mindset regarding growth, relationships, the whole gamut of how to live a balanced life. And I was invited to another event that was 2 weeks later in Los Angeles. And I ended up making it to that event. And while I'm in that event in Los Angeles, the event was called Never Work Again. And the purpose of the event was to show you how to either buy into passive income opportunities or to create them yourself. And there were these two guys from Utah, which is where I live. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. There were these two guys from Utah up on the stage sharing almost verbatim the business model that my friend had shared with me months prior. And these guys were clunky, they were unpolished, and yet people were tripping over them to give them money. They were like, it was hitting such a bell that the idea of owning real estate at such a deep discount and then creating these cash flow streams from the idea of helping people to overcome their challenges with housing, like we felt like it was great. We were going to make profit. We were going to help people. It was going to work, or they did. So I'm sitting in this event, scratching my head, going, man, I missed this part. I didn't believe my friend. I get out of that event. I immediately call him, standing outside this Hilton in Anaheim, California, and I'm apologizing to my friend. Dude, I didn't see it. I'm in. Let's go. We incorporated, and it ended up being one of the most amazing runs in my financial life that I've had for 4 years. But it didn't come without its consequence, because there was this interesting thing that was happening to me. As I had shared, that book was my first sort of entry into this idea that thoughts are things, and that the law of attraction is real, and that when you do things in a certain way, that you can actually conjure up and create specific results and experiences for yourself. And so because I had been introduced to that sort of principle, and then this thing happens where I start this new business and we start doing all these great things and making a lot of money, I became somewhat arrogant and proud about, oh, this is because of me. Like, I created this opportunity for myself, and that's why this is. And one of the massive mistakes that I made is I started to buck natural law. And what I mean by that is, for every decision that you make, there's a consequence attached to it that you cannot separate. And what had allowed me to do what I did in the beginning days in the mortgage crisis and to do the real estate stuff was I was in line with that. I was making proper decisions that were based on sound business principles, that were based on sound principles of how to do things right. When I got into my, I'm 2 years in, 3 years in, I had stopped doing that, and I started seeing or thinking that I was bigger than that I could sort of separate the consequence from our decisions. And so I was very foolish with some of the investment money that we had. I was very arrogant about the way I spent my own money. I didn't honor how amazing it was that we were doing that well, and just thought I could recreate it at any time that I ever wanted to. It didn't matter. And the result ended up being is we had a very, very spectacular crash when things went away. And the irony of that is that when that happened, it was because of my unwillingness to connect consequence to the decisions I was making. And yet at the same time, just as we had taken advantage of a unique blip in the market that allowed us to buy houses this time, when it wrapped up 4 years later, 3.5 years later, we were basically legislated out of a business model. The banks were no longer required to sell the houses at the discounts they were. We weren't able to do what we needed to because there was no margin in it anymore. We tried for a short period of time to at that time get into commercial real estate, because there were indicators showing that a lot of commercial real estate was underwater. And I was in complete resistance to this whole situation. I misunderstood exactly what was going on. My body was out of shape. I was drinking way too much. My relationships were in fray. My wife and I were not in a good place. I was sued a couple times. I mean, had all this disarray happening in my life, and I was but yet I was, quote unquote, doing the mental work to make sure that the stuff was showing up the way that I needed to, and it wasn't. And, after a bankruptcy, after a bunch of different challenges, a bout with my health that we can go into if you want to, the specifics of it that really rocked me, I realized that key principle that even though my thoughts have a powerful attraction to what I bring into them, that you cannot escape natural law, that there is a consequence attached to every decision. And so when you read in law of attraction books or self-development books about a certain way of doing things. The word certain has multiple facets to it. It means deliberate. It means specific. It means resolute. I mean, it means all these things. And I wasn't doing that. I was playing with fire and expecting not to get burned.
So, all right. So policies changed. The whole business model started to change that you couldn't sustain. So you and your partner had to close up shop and file bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And at that
well,
point,
the bankruptcy wasn't immediate. The bankruptcy was 2 years later. The bankruptcy came after we, so when we left our business, I still held investments that were still paying me money, and I still had money I was sitting on. And I transitioned into commodities of all things. I had this book of business, and I spent some time in my younger years in South America, and I speak Portuguese. And I'm thinking, let's try to do it at a bigger level. As we were talking about earlier when we spoke, I was chasing money. Like, I wasn't chasing significance. I wasn't chasing opportunity. I was chasing nothing but money. And I was sacrificing my health, my relationships, my spirituality, everything in exchange for that. And so because of that, again, I was not accounting for the consequence of the decisions that I was making, and I was foolish with my money, what money I had left. I mean, if I was to go back and to be wiser with what happened during those years, I'd still be sitting really pretty. I just was foolish.
mm-hmm.
So, so the bankruptcy happened right actually in the middle of everything that went down with my health. If you want, I can go into that and kind of share that story too.
Let's dive into that. So basically, you've had to make the shift because of different changes in the policies in the industry, but you're still an earner. You're still a hustler, and probably the hustle and the grind is what caused you to start focusing less on your health, focusing less on your relationships, which now have caught up with you. And let's talk about that. What happened?
Yeah. Well, but before I get into that, I want to make something very clear.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I'm willing to bet even people that are listening to this show right now, suffer from the fallacy that they are in a grind that will at one day produce a result that will allow them then to get out of that grind. When I was in that place, I'm like, I just got to get these deals. I got to put these deals together. I got to make it work, because then I'm going to have my big payday, and then I'll have money to step away and to like really refocus. And then I'll be out of it. It's somewhat of even like an athlete's sort of mindset. Like, I'm pushing hard in the game. I've got to finish this. I'm crushing. I'm doing this. And at the expense of your body, thinking that the game will be over at some point and you can recuperate. Well, in business, it doesn't work that way. And even in the psychology of how we are as humans, it doesn't work that way. We do not shift without there being forced adjustments for it to shift. So the idea that I was going to then have some big payday and then change things up was a lie. And I just wasn't willing to admit it. And
what about someone that's in a position where they know right now they have to work really hard. Like they're not, things aren't flowing as great as they want it to be. So they're working really hard, but they still do have that picture of what it's going to look like because they're putting in the hard work. So how do you stay present and enjoy that time when you do have to put in the work to get to where, or let's say, get more comfortable with where you want to be?
Sure. That's a great question. The way that I look at that, and my answer to your question would be, it's quite literally about compartmentalizing what you need to have present in your life so that your life can be fluid and peaceful and abundant and be full of mindfulness and thankfulness. But yet understanding that in that compartmentalizing of that, there's going to be times where you have to do things that are hard and that you don't want to do. So for example, if you're building a business, or even if you're an employee of somebody, but yet you want a better life, you want to start your own business, you want to, make more money, you want to do whatever, the truth is that you cannot do that and sacrifice your body, your spirit, or your relationships. And so, and I work on this a lot with my coaching. Every single one of my clients has a similar sort of issue with this. You've got to basically take control back of what goes between your ears. You've got to reprogram what that voice is telling you, and you've got to see your bigger picture differently. And what I've noticed is a lot of times that bigger picture will completely change once you have some clarity. Every goal that a person has what's inside it, what I would call goal DNA. It's like, a DNA strand that's in there that's got all the different little chromosomes and stuff. Your goals have those pieces. And so when somebody says, for example, that they have a goal to have a $5 million house and a stable full of exotic cars, that may be the outward picture of the goal. But the DNA of that goal is that they want the prestige associated with the luxury of those items. They want the way that it feels to sit on the back balcony of that beautiful home and look at the sunset. They want to be able to have a place where they can bring their friends to congregate and to entertain with. They want to feel the rush through their hair or their bald head, like me, where as they're speeding down the highway with the top down on their fancy sports car. And when you're able to really dive into what you're actually wanting when you set your goals, quite simply, your goals become a lot easier because you're able to remove the actual realness of the physical manifestation of the goal, and understand the feelingness of what you're going for. And when you understand the feelingness of what you're going for, you can actually get there way easier. Literally easier. It's a lot less complex. So for that specific example that you shared, when somebody has this goal and they're working towards it and they know how to do all this, the first thing that I encourage people to do is to establish a practice where they start deliberately making decisions regarding their day. They choose a time, they get up, they meditate, they start their day with mindfulness, they start expressing themselves in their journal, they take control of their body. A lot of people, when I say that, go, well, I don't have time. And I go, well, actually you do. If you do this, it will actually create space where a lot of the noise you have to deal with that you think now is things you have to pay attention to, you don't have to pay attention to anymore. So a little bit of faith shifts some things up. You start seeing things different. Your perspective changes. The voice in your head changes. You start to see and feel and have faith in a bigger, better way, a bigger, better you. You start to experience who you already are in smaller bits, and it completely changes your world. I've always felt that when you can take one man and have him change so that he can see himself as a valuable part of the society and feels that he contributes value, that man will change his family. When his family is changed, it will change his neighborhood. When his neighborhood is changed, it will change his town. His town will change his state. You can change the world one person at a time. And so you've got to be open to the idea that maybe my goals don't serve me, and really dig into exactly what you're going for. And when you do that, all of a sudden, you just start feeling loosey-goosey in life. It becomes easier. Challenges don't affect you as nearly as they did before because you're not having this rigid sort of mental structure about what you think it should be. And your expectations change about what you can offer as well as what life can respond to.
That's awesome. Okay. So, Bryce, what happens next?
So at this point in my life, are you referring to my story, like where I'm at in that process?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So I want to dive into the next phase.
Okay. Well, what happens at this point is not to be overly crass, but I'm taking a shower and I feel the boys downstairs and one of them's not right, and I call up. There's a doctor, a male doctor here in Salt Lake City. I call him up and get an appointment to go in and have my testicles checked. And we go there and he does a examination and finds out that he says, Bryce, this is bad news. I don't know exactly what it is yet, but we are going to perform an emergency surgery tomorrow. We've got to remove that guy on the right. And I'm kind of freaking out about it. I come back the next day, it's removed. They send my testicle in for biopsy. And within a couple weeks, I get word back that not only was it like a tumor on my testicle, it was a really aggressive time that was starting to kind of assimilate into it. And this was the surgery was right before Thanksgiving, and I found that out about the surgery was the beginning of November, and I found out the stuff from the biopsy right before Thanksgiving. And here in Salt Lake, there's a cancer institute called Huntsman Cancer Institute. It's world renowned. It's one of the best there is. And I was given a doctor's name up there, so you need to go meet up with this person, and they're going to go over some other things. You might need to get a CT scan and some other things. It's right before Thanksgiving. I'm like, I'll wait till after the holiday. That happens. My wife's pushing. I don't do it. Christmas comes. I still haven't done it. I'll wait till the new year. New year comes, and she finally pushes me hard enough, and she's like, dude, this is ridiculous. Like, go get this checked out. You don't want to mess with this. So the short version is that I go and I get a CT scan. I meet with the doctor up there, and he tells me basically that based off what they found in the biopsy, that and the CT scan, that even though they haven't done the test, that he said it's an official diagnosis. Your lymph nodes are inflamed based off of how the vena cava works, the main artery that goes down the right side of your body, and how it plays into your testicle and everything. He's like, we know you had testicular cancer, and that's a result of the lymphoma that's in your lymph nodes on the right side. And he had recommended a surgery called the retroperitoneal lymph node dissection. They wanted to cut me from my belly button to my sternum, go behind my arteries, my organs, and snip out all the bad stuff. It's going to include chemotherapy. It was going to include, a month to 6 weeks in the hospital, very expensive. And this was a kick to the face for me because, at the time I was 37 when this happened. It was 5 years ago. And it was the first time in my entire life where, not just metaphorically, but quite literally speaking, I started to realize my life has a clock on it, and that clock will expire at some point. There will come a point where I will leave this earth. And being as scary as lymphoma and testicular cancer was, I thought I might not see my daughters grow up. I mean, all these different fears. It was very emotional. I was crying, and just, it was this moment between my wife and I.
Yeah.
And, realize that this time I'm on the tail end of a bankruptcy. I'm at the tail end of two failed businesses, basically, my real estate business and my commodities business. I'm out of money. I don't know what I'm going to do. And it just feels like I couldn't get really any lower. I didn't know what to do. The same partner that I had in my real estate business in the mid 2000s that had an issue where he had been diagnosed with liver cancer. He had a bunch of tumors on his liver. They told him that he had less than 6 months. He wasn't even a recipient for a transplant. It was so bad. And he's really stubborn. And he decided to go research alternative treatments. And he found this clinic in Mexico, and they did a really intense version of what's called Gershon therapy, which is a sort of a holistic whole body approach to healing. And respective to cancer treatment, Gershon's been around for 80 years. It has countless. It's very controversial. A lot of people think it's a bunch of malarkey, but it works. And I call him up for some moral support, kind of freaking out. And he's like, "You have a choice, Bryce." And I go, "Yeah, I know I have a choice." And he goes, "No, you're not hearing me. You have a choice. Have you been deliberately choosing your health?" And I couldn't answer yes. I said, "No, it's been passive." And he goes, "Well, try that. Try choosing health." And he goes, "You got nothing to lose. Give Gershon a try." He goes, "You don't need to go to Mexico. You're not as far gone as I was." But the part of that story was that he went to Mexico for 6 months, lived in this colony that did this thing, came back, and blood work and everything, and he was clean, and there was no signs of anything. I mean, he was on death's door, and he was fully healed in 6 months. So I think I got nothing to lose. I change up my diet. I change up all these different behavioral things I had to change. And more importantly, I had to change up the energy to which I allowed myself to be a part of on a regular basis, meaning that, if you look at the word disease and break it apart, it means, dis-ease. You are not at ease. And so when our bodies are full of disease, it really is a manifestation of our person, that we are not at ease. We're not feeling in love with our lives, so to speak. And so I thought, okay, I got to change up stresses. I got to do different things. I got to, I was still doing the commodities thing somewhat at that time, but it was very, very challenging to do because we were running out of money. And several months later, I find myself in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm half drunk with a steak in my belly, realizing I can't do this anymore. And I was doing an inventory of what I'd gone through in the last 6, 7 years of my life, and I realized I've been chasing money. I haven't done anything worthwhile, really, even though I tried to convince myself that the stuff I was doing in real estate was good for the people I was helping. It didn't feel that way. I thought I need to do something different. I gotta drink my own Kool-Aid, so to speak, and see if I can create a life where I have a great business, I can get my health back, I can improve my relationship, I can get in touch with spirit and source again, and do it different. And so I came home and actually started a podcast. I realized I was out of my element. I didn't know how to create a balanced life that was full of abundance. I'd been to seminars, I'd read books, but when I looked around my circle at that time, I didn't know anybody that was crushing in all those areas, that was in great shape with great money and great relationships and, doing purpose-driven things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started my podcast, it was called Rules of Success. And that was what I wanted to meet people that were killing it in the right way. And
Right.
I did. I had that podcast for 2.5 years, 182 episodes, got to interview some amazing people. New York Times bestselling authors, A-list celebrities, professional athletes, Emmy award-winning musicians. I mean, great people that knew little tricks that I was able to put together. And quite honestly, it was that experience there that hatched my mindset and performance coaching business, because I would have then people reach out to me like, how does that work? And I was applying this stuff in my life at the time, kind of being my own little guinea pig. Like, well, that works. That really doesn't. I was taking things from my past, things I'd already learned. And I was, basically creating this curriculum, if you will, that could take any person that had willingness and take them from a place where they were disconnected in life and didn't know what they wanted and felt like they didn't have a purpose, to a place where they were thriving and I understood all those things. And the summer of 2017, I actually shut that podcast down because I realized that it was taking away from my ability to impact people. I didn't need it as a classroom anymore the way that I had once needed it. I needed to be helping others more, and that was taking away time and resources to do that. As far as my cancer is concerned, about a year and a half ago, I went back in and got blood work, got another scan, and I'm good. I'm strong. I'm healthy. I learned how to work out differently based on my surgery and the things that my body needs as a 42-year-old male now.
Now you didn't go the chemical route. So the doctors wanted to put you on chemo, and you denied that, correct?
Yeah, they didn't like that either.
Well,
I was told quite flippantly that when my little experiment fails, come back and they'll see if they can still help me, which was quite sobering. But
that's got to be scary. That's got to be a scary decision to make. Not knowing that you're going to go that route, where doctors who are supposed to know everything about the body are telling you not to, and you decided to go the holistic route.
Yeah. Well,
did you did you actually go to Mexico?
No, I didn't. I did.
Okay.
My friend had given me some great resources to read about and to do things. The Gershon therapy treatment is something that, quite honestly, anybody can do. It's a change in diet. There's these cleanses you do that help your liver to release toxins, that keeps your bowels clean. Like it's anybody can do it. I mean, it's basically, a lot of people are living versions of it right now without even knowing it. A keto-centric diet with organic foods and focusing on inflammation and making sure that your body is responding, that your adrenal makeup is sound, and that your hormone levels, like all that stuff, is a part of the holistic approach of Gershon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what happens. I mean, something as simple as focusing on your body being free of inflammation can rid you from so many different issues in your health that a lot of people deal with. I mean, our food sucks. It's mass produced. There's all these different chemicals injected into our meats. I mean, all this stuff that we think is normal, that's hard to get around, it has an effect after years and years and years and years of being consumed, that when you shift it up even just a little bit, your body responds. The body is so resilient. When you give it the nutrients that it needs, when you give it what it needs, and you love it and you let it feel good, and you stress it and test it in the proper ways through physical training, it responds, man. The human body is amazing. But we take that for granted. We think that I even had that thought in my late 30s, of all things, my late 30s, and I'm acting like I'm gone. I'm having these thoughts like, oh, it's not going to come back. This cancer juggernaut's going to be, it's going to take me. And I quickly had to overcome that mindset, obviously. And part of what helped me to overcome that was the research that I did specific to the cancer industry. Now, I'm not here to say that if somebody chooses to go traditional, that they made a bad decision. That's not what I'm here to say. I will say that I encourage everybody to explore every avenue of treatment possible. Because what I found is, for my specific ailment, traditional treatment would have been my end. And not to get all conspiracy theory on your listeners, but when you start looking at the math of what the cancer industry represents financially to the medical industry in its whole, that's a big red flag. I mean, it literally props up the medical industry. And so there's really not a lot of financial interest to cure it, because it would wipe out an entire, derivative of profit and funds that a huge part of our economy relies on. And I as a business guy, I saw that. As somebody that cared about my own life and my own legacy, I saw that, I really have nothing to lose if I try this other thing. I mean, what's 6 months? What's a year? Like, I'm not, with where I was at, I had several years to live as it was anyway. It wasn't like I was, like my friend where he was months. So I took that chance, and it was the best decision I ever made for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is for the perspective that it gave me on how to look at my health. And that opened me up to a lot of different things that have really helped me become a very good coach and helping other people too. Because when we start, consider this idea, Greg. What if you're wrong? Like, what if the dearly held beliefs that that are true, or at least you think what if they're wrong? What would it mean to you to learn that that there's a different, better way? It's something as simple as being even open to that question can cause the human spirit to really dive into some things that might seem scary or even loony up front. But truth is truth, and it will manifest itself when you apply it. And so we're all scientists on this earth in a way. Try things out, see if they work. And that was my sort of like, well, let's give it a go.
Well,
and
I'm
that
a big
taps
believer
in.
of challenging your beliefs.
Say that again, please.
I'm a big believer in challenging your beliefs, your belief system.
What if you're wrong? I'm just kidding. That's good. We should always be pushing against norms. People, evolution happens when things are painful. And I'm not talking about physical pain necessarily. I'm talking about resistance to the norm causes pain. When you look at the example of like a rubber band, when you stretch a rubber band, it pulls on all those rubber fibers and everything, but that's what its purpose is. Its purpose is to be able to pull against the resistance so that it holds itself in place. That causes pain in humans. And so we need to be okay with that for a little bit so that we can see what's on the other side of it. And it's one of the most rewarding things you can do for yourself. So if you're listening to this and you think you know something so vehemently that you are unwilling to challenge it, that is a tell. You got to poke on that. One of the most impactful things that I did for myself during this entire process is I started questioning everything. I was looking around, and it changed my belief. And all, I was at one point I was very religious. I shifted out of that. There was all these different things that happened when I started pushing against those dear held beliefs, those sacred cows, if you will.
Which the people around you are not going to like either.
Yeah, it was. My parents are still very religious, and they've come to terms with this, and they understand that I'm in a great place, and that I actually haven't changed my morals by any means. I've just go through a different doorway, so to speak, as far as like how I apply principles of love and acceptance and faith and things like that.
Sure.
But the point I was getting at with that is that it's really important for us to be open to being wrong and being glad that we're wrong. When I started doing all these things, I made an inventory of what my actual beliefs were. Being a part of any organized religion, no matter the religion, it's almost like they hand you a little book and go, here's your stuff. You got to believe all this stuff. And when you don't buy into a certain aspect of it, they tell you, well, that's still God's will. You need to, have faith that that's right. And it's off your shoulders. You just got to believe that. And I was in a position where I could no longer buy that anymore. I'm like, well, what do I really believe? And it was so liberating then to have a proverbial list of, this is all the stuff that I know to be true, supposedly. I think that other stuff's a bunch of nonsense. I'm good now. And it just allowed me to have like a, zero basis. I was at ground zero for myself. Okay, from here I can build. And when I look around, in my coaching business, that's a part of the problem I see so many people have, men especially, for whatever reason. We're the masculine energy is a caretaking, a protective energy. We want to be the provider for those that we love. And we push aside certain emotional feelings and certain things because they're not timely. Like, I don't have time for that right now. But those are indicators of something else that could actually make us better at providing and better at protecting and better at loving, but we push them away. And so I started to see this landscape from an energetic standpoint, from an emotional standpoint. When I was doing my podcast, I'd have these people that would teach me these other things, and it just became really profound to me how in a lot of ways, we're so close, but so far from exactly what we need to be doing to have our best life. And I went through the gauntlet of that myself. One of the reasons why I'm so committed and love so much my career and my calling, if you will, as a coach, is I get that, man, I don't want everybody to have to go through what I went through to learn this. Like, that's not required. Lean on my experience for a little bit. I can walk you through this. And you can learn through me. You don't have to be death's door, so to speak, to have your best self.
Yeah, that's pretty much like the whole point of this podcast, is to bring someone like you on here to be able to communicate your story and share with people. Like, there's, if you're going through something similar, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's people that could guide you, that have been there. They could help you maybe avoid certain mistakes. So, man,
like we said, man, you're not alone.
You're not alone. Bryce, this was awesome, man. This was, I'm really glad you came on the show, and you have a great story. And you are, just from talking to you a couple of times, I could tell like how impactful your coaching is. So let's leave off by just kind of telling everyone how to get in touch with you, your way to find you.
Sure. I've got, there's a couple different ways, but I think the easiest way would be to just go to my website, which is my namesake. It's bryceprescott.com. That's BRYCEPRESCOTT.com. What you'll find there is I actually have a coaching tab that shows you some different ways that you can interact with me, depending on what your needs will be in coaching. I am a podcaster again. I started my own podcast in January of 2018 called The Bryce Prescott Show. It's a little bit more lighthearted of approach. I've found myself to really enjoy, comedy and laughs and having a fun, gregarious life. And so I share both coaching principles and things on my podcast, as well as aspects of my life that some might find entertaining. The links are there. I've got a YouTube channel. I've got Instagram. I've got Facebook. Every link you would need to find me is on my website at bryceprescott.com. So just head over there and go down the rabbit hole. I got my YouTube channel has over 350 videos on it. I've got there's tons of stuff for you guys to get a further idea about whether or not I could help you before you even have to reach out, just on my socials and the content I've created. Yeah, man, that's awesome. Go follow Bryce. If you're in the Utah area, go watch him do his stand-up gig. You were telling me that you do open mic stand-up, which is probably that's probably like the scariest thing you could face. I know another friend of mine who's he's like a business and marketing guy. He does open mic too, just to get out of his comfort zone. So yeah, that's interesting. It hasn't come across too much on this podcast, but I'm kind of a smart ass. I enjoy making people laugh, and I have a friend of mine that basically pushed me. He's like, dude, you got to try it at least. And I tried it and I got addicted. And I'm like, oh man, this is the process of writing jokes. And like, it's such a different set of rules. Yeah. And I'm just having so much fun. And the irony of it all is that me getting better every week at stand-up is helping me be better as a coach. I'm seeing angles and different things on communication, on how people are, on like how people observe things, how I observe things, that have opened my awareness up more. So I get to stand up in front of people, make them laugh, and become better at my craft. I call that a win. I'll take it. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. Really appreciate you coming on the show. And we'll close up shop here and hope everyone got a lot of value out of this. I think you probably did. And we'll see you next time. Appreciate it, man. It's been a great chat. Yeah. Hey, if you love the show, make sure to keep following us on iTunes. It's the Challenge to Triumph show. And also head over to challenge2triumph.com and, follow the journey. Stay a part of the journey. I'll be sending you some really valuable emails and keeping you up to date with who the next guest will be on. So let's stay connected. And if you got a lot of value out of this show, please go over to iTunes and leave a positive review. It would really help boost the show. And thank you so much for listening. Take care.